Hey there, so I got another video for you today. I'm going to be talking about some build around cards in Star Wars Unlimited. These are cards that either I've already been building around, making some decks with, or cards that I think maybe will get unlocked in the future with some more card releases. They're just some interesting cards that can kind of be centerpieces in a deck, kind of will take your deck in a particular direction more so than a lot of other cards. So yeah, I'm going to go through a list of 10 plus some honorable mentions and just give you some ideas for them. If this is the kind of content you like, I'd really appreciate if you take a moment, subscribe to the channel, like the video. It would mean a lot to me. All right, let's get started. So the honorable mentions, we got 5 here. I'm going to go quick on these. So the first is Lieutenant Chilton. He's a blue build around, all right? There's nothing that interesting about him. I just think he's like very strong, and if we get even more incentives to be in a mono blue deck, he will obviously be a very important part of that, being a reliable 5/5 Sentinel for 4 and potentially even a 6/6 if you take one of the first 2 turns off. It's just good rate. I don't think you need to like build that much around him in general, mostly just play blue cards. But he gets a little shout out. Don't get cocky here. I've already seen some decks built around this a little bit where you just jam your deck full of 7-cost cards and like a Casino Han, which I've seen. It's a really interesting take on an archetype. I think maybe if we can try to be even a little more consistent with what this card can do. It needs to really do at least 5 damage for it to be worth it, in my opinion, which is not always easy, but it's got some real high roll potential, and you can do some cool stuff with it. Bib Fortuna here, I think, is an interesting build around for an event-focused deck. It's the potential to like get 1 resource every turn by spamming events. If you play an event every turn, it's kind of like you played a resupply, right? You just getting 1 free resource every turn. I don't think we have enough yet to really warrant that kind of play patterns, but I've already played a bit around this with like in a sneak attack deck. I made a video about that with a Grand Inquisitor deck to get like a double cheat for some units, and it's pretty cool. Smoke and Cinders, I'm pretty sure the card was designed for Twin Suns, but if we get to a point where the games slow down substantially and doing some of this like giant hand attack style decks, I think maybe this could sneak in. We start building around this. Other cards like Forced Surrender and just really attack hands. And another shout out for You're My Only Hope. Interestingly enough, this was also in that Casino Han deck with Don't Get Cocky. It's another card that I think to truly unlock, we will need more supporting pieces, cards that will let you more consistently know what's on top of your deck. We've got like R2 right now. It's not a ton, but I think more importantly, if we ever get a card like something like if anyone's played Magic, they added a card called Brainstorm, for instance, which was draw 3 cards, put 2 cards from your hand back on top of your deck. If we ever get a kind of filtering card like that lets you take cards from your hand and put them on top, this will really be unlocked. All right. So we're going to go into the top 10 now for me. And keep in mind, it's not like a power ranking. It's just like things I'm interested in. Some of them are already powerful. Some of them not so much. Number 10. This one's definitely not powerful yet. It's a 1/1. It's Vanguard Ace. 1 played. For each other card you've played this phase, give an experience token to this unit. So what are we trying to do with here is make a giant 2 cost, right? I think for this to ever really be worth it, it needs to get to 4/4 in stats, because a 2 cost 3/3, although above rate in space, is not substantially above rate to warrant all the hoops you have to go through. Right now, none of its tags matter. New Republic doesn't really do anything. There's one thing that you can do with this card right now, which is play it with Uwing Reinforcement, and that card will let you potentially bring in 3 cards into play and play them. So this would come in as a 4/4 off of a Uwing Reinforcement in that situation, which is cool, right? I think if we get more cheap cards, more ways to like play cards, return cards to our hand, play cards, and just like take tons of game actions like that, this could be pretty cool. I don't think it's even remotely powerful right now, but it's something I'm interested keeping an eye on. Number 9, Galactic Ambition. Play a non-hero unit from your hand for free, deal damage to your base equal to its cost. This costs 7, so the idea here is to cheat something really enormous into play and deal a bunch of damage to yourself. Biggest thing we got right now is Devastator, which granted coming out 3 turns early can be game winning. The problem is it deals 10 to you when that happens, and unless you're playing against a deck that absolutely is not attacking you, that's a lot. So where can this fit right now is maybe you play it against control decks who are not pressuring your life total. The problem is most of those control decks play blue. They have cards like Vanquish, which would suck if it happened to you. But there are some like red-green control decks, like a Darth Vader deck, where they're not pressuring your life total that much early on, and additionally do not have cards like Vanquish, do not have yellow cards like Waylay to really punish that early giant starship. But so far, I think it's extremely fringe. But, and this is a big one, if we get some stuff that are absolutely game-winning when they come into play, you got to keep an eye out at this, because this costs 7. If it cheats something that costs 14 in a play that instantly wins you the game, you're going to have to pay attention. Number 8, For a Cause I Believe In. This is already one of the best cards in the game. I don't think it gets thought of that much as a build-around, but it is very much a build-around. And right now, it's pretty easy to build around it, because most of the good hero aggression cards are in the heroism alignment, right? So you make a Sabine aggro deck, most of your deck is just heroism cards, and you obviously play this in it, and then you have the absolute best burn event in the game. It reliably does 4 damage, sometimes 3, but usually 4. It's incredibly powerful. What's interesting to me about this is what's going to happen when we start getting more aggressive slanted cards that are not heroism aligned. Now we're going to have to start making decisions, right? Right now you can play, for instance, a mono red Sabine deck. The problem with that is that in order to play For a Cause I Believe In, you have to go incredibly deep into the heroism pool, and your card quality drops substantially. But what's going to happen when we get more double red cards and more single red cards that are powerful? Will we be able to make an aggro deck that does not rely on this card? So that's when the tension might come up, and we'll really have to decide if we're going to build around this or not. It's also an interesting thing, this with one of the honorable mentions, You're My Only Hope. This is actually another card that lets you stack your deck a little bit. If one of those 4 cards is something you want to cheat, you put it 3rd from the top. The next turn you draw 2. That card ends up on top. You play You're My Only Hope. You got something going on. All right, number 7, General Tag, I believe is how you pronounce this, but maybe I'm wrong. 2 cost for 5/5 worth of stats is really good rate. The problem is it's incredibly hard to pull off. It's not really a 2-drop, right? The only way you could get tons of value off of this on turn 2 even is if you had a bunch of 1-drops that you played on the first couple turns. However, I think we get more good troopers, especially troopers that have lots of health, because I think a lot of the issue right now is that your troopers just end up dying real fast, or they get barraged even after you give them experience. But if we can start sticking more units with bigger health, and this guy is actually a 2-cost 5/5, I mean, we play Wing Leader in all our hero aggro decks, right? And that's total aggregate is 3 cost for a 4/3. So this is 2 for 5/5 worth of stats. That's incredibly, incredibly powerful if it gets more enablers. I think it'll be very important for a trooper leader in this case, because that'll give you another likely big-butted unit to put an experience on that would also be a reliable target for it. But it's interesting, and I'm keeping an eye out on this one. All right, number 6, Wedge Antilles. It's a vehicle build around, right? The issue right now is there aren't really a lot of cheap vehicles, first of all. Second of all, most vehicles that are played already have ambush, so they kind of lose a bit of the perk that this is given. So other than that, it's kind of like a General Dodonna or General Veers for vehicles. 5 cost, 5/5 is okay stats. It's generally not good enough in this game to be a 5 cost, 5/5 that doesn't do something else very impactful. Additionally, most of the 5 cost units are kind of gate kept right now by Energy Conversion Lab. I think most of them just wouldn't see play if Energy Conversion Lab wasn't paired with them. Now, you can pair this with Energy Conversion Lab. Obviously, it's in green. But, you don't get really anything by ambushing this guy in. So what we need is more cheap vehicles, especially if we can get into a situation where we have vehicles in play already and then we play Wedge and kind of buff the whole board. It'd help if we had vehicles that had Sentinel, which would then protect Wedge that turn so that the next turn you can follow up with an ambush vehicle. There's like a cool one like Cargo Juggernaut right now is a 4/6 vehicle with a shield. Now that would be amazing to ambush as a 5/7, right? There just aren't very many good targets for the ambush, and there aren't enough cheap units to get this guy going yet. Number 5, Outmaneuver. Really cool card. It's also the namesake of a cool podcast that you should check out. This doesn't maybe scream build around at first. It looks like it's like a delaying tactic, something like a Thrawn deck might use. However, if you can turn this into a one-sided card, you got something going on. And that's something I've done. I started playing this with Han. I think a while ago, even when the set first came out, someone was beating me up on online with a Han Outmaneuver deck. I got interested in it. It was a really long time ago. It was before the whole set. Now we've got the whole set. I think it's still a little tricky to get enough good space units in a deck like that. But it's got game. I actually think it basically free beats Sabine. So if you just want to beat Sabine almost 100% of the time, Han Red full space deck will get you there. It's cool. You're basically just going to race, right? The interesting thing about Han with this outmaneuver strategy is he can kind of get your space units on rate, right? Because the issue space racing ground units is that space units tend to be understated compared to ground units. Well, Han lets you just play ahead of curve, so your 4-drop space units are coming out at the time their opponent's 3-drop ground units are coming out. So they're kind of keeping pace that way. And then, yeah, you just completely ignore the ground. You play this to basically delay X amount of damage, however much is going to get at you from the ground, and you go from there. I think this can get even better as we get better space units to pair it with. I don't think it'll really be possible to do the reverse where you kind of go full ground, because I think most decks just play too many ground units for you to be the full ground deck where you just exhaust space units. But I think a full space build around, this is already fringe playable. I think it's got some good matchups, so I'm excited to see if it gets pushed even further. Number 4, my favorite card in Star Wars Unlimited, Force Throw. This is kind of a stand-in for all the Force cards, and it binds all things, the Force is with me, and Force Lightning. The reason it's the one that's here, it's because it's a lot better than those other 3 cards. It's not even close. Force Throw is incredible, and it's already, in my opinion, in one of the better decks in the game, in a Chirrut Red deck. I think that deck has very good game into this meta game. I think it's very powerful, and I actually think it can get even better, because the more force enabling cards, like units with force trait, and the more force payoffs we get, I think will exponentially increase the power level of decks built around the force trait. I'm excited to see what's going to happen more with villain, because I think they force focused villain decks are a little weaker, because first of all, they have less units with force trait, and also, in my opinion, less powerful units with the force trait, and their leaders are also a little more expensive, right? As I mentioned, Chirrut, he's cheap, he's invincible, so all these force cards get turned on with him. It's a little harder with villain, but I'm very excited to see the future of anything that's going to be force centered, and Force Throw, I believe, will be here for a very long time. Number 3, Pired Starfighter. It's 2/4 for 2. It's got raid 1, so its stats are obviously very pushed for a 2-drop space unit. When played, it's got a downside, right? You have to return a non-leader unit to a friendly non-leader unit to its owner's hand, right? You have to like bounce one of your own cards back to your hand. Well, we got to find a way to make that not a downside. Right now, there's not a lot going on. You can play like ISB agent, right? That's the guy that deals 1 to something when he comes into play. He costs 1. You play him, you bounce him back, you do it again. It's like cool, I guess. Mostly right now, it's you just like kind of use it with other 1-drops, or you can use it with like Leia Organa, where she'll like come into play. She'll ready one of your resources. You bounce her back to your hand. You have her later. Basically, we're trying to make it a 3-cost 2/4 with raid 1, either by bouncing a 1-drop or bouncing Leia. That's cool. It's still like decent rate at that cost. It's kind of like a Millennium Falcon worth of stats. What I'm excited to see happen here is just more cards where we actively want to bounce them back to our hand and start this value engine. Cards that have like healing on, like cheap cards specifically, right? It's going to be hard to like bounce expensive cards back to our hand, but cheap cards with impactful abilities, maybe healing, maybe like little ambush guys, cards like even Death Trooper right now is a cool one that could potentially be bounced back to our hand with a powerful enter play effect. Long term, I'm interested to see what we'll be able to do with this. Number 2, Sneak Attack. I've already built a Sneak Attack deck that I think is really cool, really fun, and pretty strong. It's a Grand Inquisitor deck where we sneak some stuff in and then get double activations from them because of Grand Inquisitor's ability. Cheating things into play is notoriously strong in card games. This cheats 1 resource and also lets them come into play ready, obviously, so you get to push a bunch of damage. Unfortunately, your unit dies, but hey, some units you want them to die, like K2SO or Ruthless Raider, right? They have good effects when they die, so why not more, right? We get more cool stuff to sneak in, more very impactful enter play or leave play effects where we can more reliably get good value from this. It actually works kind of cool with the Pired Starfighter, where you can sneak something in, do the job, and then bounce that card back to your hand with Pired Starfighter. It won't die. Both those cards are in that Grand Inquisitor deck. If you want to check out a video on it, just check out the rest of my channel. Very fun deck, all right? And I think this will be a very fun card for a long time to come. And number 1, Uwing Reinforcement. This card's already very powerful as well. I think you can already kind of build around this. I think a Han Green deck can utilize this incredibly well. I think you can play this in like a Luke Green deck. But why is it number 1? Well, I'm really excited for some like crazy combos that we might get. I don't even like want to hypothesize what might happen, but if we start getting like 2-3 unit combos that can like do some crazy stuff when they enter play together, this is going to be really fun. I think another Magic reference, if anyone's played like Collected Company in Magic the Gathering, knows what kind of crazy shenanigans can start to happen when you have a giant pool of cards to work with. Right now, it's just a value card. There are some cool interactions where you can like Fleet Lieutenant a unit that was already in play and like Wing Leader that same unit. There's like Millennium Falcon coming in and then getting Fleet Lieutenant so it can like attack immediately. There's some synergies like that, some like cool combos, but I'm just waiting for this to unlock some nuts, like over the top fun shenanigans, and I think it'll be really fun to build around this card for a long time. All right, that's what I got for you. If there are any build arounds that you think I missed, I'm sure I have. There were like 10 more, 15 more cards that I almost decided to do a video on, but this is where I kind of called it. Let me know if there's stuff that you've built around that you think is interesting. I'd be happy to take a look. And hope to catch you again. Take care.